Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
PCS moves can put real strain on military families, from unexpected costs to the impact on careers and kids. Sarah Roeder, Director of Partnerships and Member Engagement at Armed Forces Mutual, joined Federal Drive host Terry Gerton to explain where families get caught off guard and what helps smooth the transition.
Summer change of station moving is right around the corner for a lot of military families. From your perspective there at Armed Forces Mutual, what do you see as families begin to approach this? Why is this so challenging for so many of them?
As we call it, PCS season, like you said, is upon us. And for the military community, such as myself, I'm a military spouse. I have done several PCS moves. And it's so challenging for our community because we're moving every 2 to 4 years, right? So we're kind of constantly on the go. But a lot of it comes down to the financial aspects of moving. When you're having to move at a cadence like that, there are a lot of financial things that come into play. And so we see at Armed Forces Mutual, our families sometimes finding themselves in financial stress or feeling the financial burden of a PCS move. And like I said, you're doing this in the cadence of every 2 to 4 years. And so that adds up. That's a lot of dollars. And so that's one of the things that we see as a stressor when it comes to PCSing.
Moving that frequently is one way to make sure you don't accumulate a lot of stuff or fill up a basement. But as you say, it can present some financial challenges. The military does reimburse a lot of the costs associated with permanent change of station. But talk to us about some of those unreimbursable costs or non-reimbursed costs that do present families with additional financial challenge.
Yes. So I'll tell you myself, as a very new military spouse, I very naively thought that, well, the military is going to take care of everything, right? Everything that I need to move. And they do, like you said, take care of a lot of those expenses. But every time you move, there's always the unexpected. For myself, one of the things that I found that was a very unexpected thing was, and you don't realize, is when you're moving was the re-enrollment of everything. So if you have children and you're moving, you have to re-enroll them into sports, right? They play sports, they're active, you want to be a part of the community, re-enrolling into sports activities, buying new uniforms, right? Getting integrated into a school and buying new school supplies sometimes. Setting up a home, right? As we move, especially as military spouse, you want to set up your home and you want it to feel comfortable and nice. And so with that, you realize my couch that fit in my last home does not fit into my new space that I've just moved into. And so you're unexpectedly having to buy furniture to fit into new spaces. And so these are kind of the additional, I guess you could say, hidden costs sometimes that we don't realize that we will experience. And in understanding it, you can plan a little bit ahead of time and say, I need to have a buffer. I need to have a financial buffer so that when I move and I hit these unexpected things, it doesn't feel burdensome or more stressful. It's already a stressful time. Trying to alleviate some stress, this is a great way to do that. I'll tell you, even one time our goods were supposed to arrive at a certain, date and time, and they were a week late. And I didn't account for having an extra week's worth of clothes. And so it was finding, where do I wash these clothes? Or I need to go to Target and buy new clothes because we're out. And so these are just kind of all the little tiny things that happen as you go through these moves every 2 to 4 years, like our military families do.
I remember thinking about things like all of the condiments in your refrigerator that you have to throw away and replace.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was about mayonnaise.
Yeah, it can be as simple as mayonnaise. And these are the things that, if we can plan a little bit, right? As I became a more seasoned military spouse and realized, I need to have a financial buffer because I am going to have to replace the mayonnaise, right? And re-enroll in the schools and do all this stuff was, planning ahead for that and making sure I had additional funds so that it didn't feel as stressful.
Sarah Roeder is Director of Partnerships and Member Engagement at Armed Forces Mutual. Sarah, you've said a couple of times that you're a military spouse. Let's talk about the impact of this move on the spouse themselves, trying to maintain a career through repeated moves. What actually helps as spouses navigate this transition?
Yeah. So I have done that, right? Looked for work and new duty stations and tried to, actively be a part of the workforce outside of my home. And there's a lot of challenges when it comes to being a military spouse and working outside of the home. I'll give you a quick little data point here. The Department of Labor says that it takes, on average, a military spouse 19 weeks to find work and secure employment after relocation. That's about 4 months, right? So that's 4 months of lost income. That's 4 months of time. So I think one of the biggest things that as a military spouse we can do is knowing that it's going to take us time and starting that process early. 4 to 6 months before a move. We live in such a digital world now with Teams and Zooms, and you can interview across the country for jobs. It's doing that ahead of time, really starting to look at the community you're going to be moving into and start your job hunt 4 to 6 months beforehand. One of the great resources I encourage every military spouse to check out is the Military Spouse Employment Partnership portal through the DoD, MSEP. It is a list of about 1,000 companies that say, we actively want to hire military spouses. We want to hire them. We realize that you're going to move. We realize that you're capable, wonderful workers, but you live a transient lifestyle across, the world, and that's okay. And so they are companies that when you initially are applying or looking for employment there, you don't have to be worried or scared to say you're a military spouse. You can be very proud of that. And you can search by, geographic location. And so I would say that's one of the biggest things as a military spouse is looking for employment well before your move to get a head start.
And Sarah, you also talked about the impact on kids. What helps smooth that transition into a new community and school when young children are involved in the move as well?
That's a hard one, right? Our kids are really resilient and we know that, but we still have to support them and have a network. One of the things that I found that was a great resource in communities was one was the sports aspect. My boys love to play sports. And so that was a great way to tie immediately into a community and into a school system. But another one of those great touch points was Blue Star Families has something called Coffee Connects. You can look on their website and find where the Coffee Connect in your installation is. And it's a very casual setting at a coffee house locally where military spouses come. If they have really little kids who aren't in school, they bring them. If it happens to be on a weekend, you can bring all of the children. And it was a great resource to feel like the second you walked in, I didn't have to explain myself. Everyone was the same as me in a sense. We're all military spouses. We're all moving. We're all starting over, every 2 to 4 years, trying to get our footing. And it was a really nice way to meet other military spouses in the community and other families, right? And so we can be the connection point for our children to help them establish the play dates and meeting other friends and things like that. And so those were two really big things that I leaned on personally was the sports and then being a part of kind of Coffee Connects or community activities.
Last summer around this time, DoD was making a lot of changes to the moving contractors associated with military moves. There's always something happening in the PCS space. Where can military families get the latest info and how can they use that to best prepare for a move that they know is going to happen?
Yeah, so that's great. And like you said, the DoD has a great place, that you can go and look at that. But I'll be really honest. I think one of the most helpful things was looking to social media. Quite honestly, I think that when we look at certain Facebook groups or even in the Blue Star Families neighborhood within the community you're about to move, asking how other people's moves went, asking how did that in the last 2 weeks, right? How did your move actually go? Who was your provider that you were using? What did it look like? Were your goods delayed? Were they not? Did you get reimbursed? I think is a great way to really actually know kind of the boots on the ground, what's happening. Because I think a lot of times, right, we look to the guidelines of what should be happening. And a lot of times what should happen doesn't quite translate over. And so I personally want to hear from the individual that just went through it. And I want to know, what was your experience? And then I can best prepare for that. So that's my recommendation. Those are the things that I leaned on as a military spouse. Anytime there was a change, a regulatory change, or a change in anything, yes, I can look that up, but I want to hear from the people that are going through it, right? And so I found through social media, there's lots of avenues to do that. And Blue Star Families has Blue Star Family Neighborhood, which is kind of a secure site for military spouses to be able to go into and talk about these things. And that was a great resource.
Sarah Roeder is Director of Partnerships and Member Engagement at Armed Forces Mutual. We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Listen to the Federal Drive on your schedule. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.